Today, the president said he might declare a national emergency in order to get wall funding. Let's talk about this and the other issues related to the shutdown with my panel. Is that the right way to do it, an emergency, declaring a national emergency?
I don't think that exercising extreme measures of executive power is a great idea, just in general. And, you know, I think he made an argument that, look, if Obama could do this on DACA, even though he said he couldn't, then I should be able to do this. And I would say, no, that is not the right path, because if you really can't do it, you really shouldn't do it. And look, and I know there are powers in the presidency, I get it. Continue trying to make a deal. He made this promise to his voters. I know that they're in a stalemate. If they want this to end, Democrats are probably going to have to give him a little something that feels like a win that he can call a win, and then it will end.
Yeah,
do you agree?
So here's
I'll come to you after
the
this.
biggest challenge, and I do want to get to the this national emergency issue, to declaring national emergency. But my fundamental problem with this is not going to be a win, period. The president's campaign promise was to build a wall and to have who pay for it?
Mexico.
Exactly. And so at some point you have to acknowledge that you getting 50% of what you promised a lot of voters who voted for you for this particular issue. This is not a win, period. You're making those same voters pay for this. I know some of them have started a GoFundMe or whatever to help support that, and, you know, more power to them. But at some point, he's got to acknowledge that this was not the campaign promise, and there's revisionist history, surprise, surprise, from this administration on what that campaign promise was. On the national emergencies piece, I promise is my last point. The national emergencies piece, there have been limitations placed and codified for this very reason that were signed into law by Gerald Ford. So if there are limitations on what a national emergency even is, let's just start there and just stop. Full stop.
So let me ask you this, because President Trump is already trying to do the spin that this deal, the new trade deal, which has yet to be ratified by Congress, but if it goes through, that will ultimately be Mexico paying for the wall. To the base, does it matter?
I don't think that it matters a lot. I think, look, the spoiler alert here is, this is how this ends. Something gets passed at some point. Pelosi and Schumer come out, give a press conference and say, we've reopened the government and we haven't given him his wall. And then President Trump signs it and says, they gave me my wall. And it doesn't matter what's in the actual bill. Democrats will say they didn't give him wall money. Trump will say he did get wall money. That's how this ends. The question is, how fast do we get to that point? And we'll get to that point when one side or the other feels some sort of political pain. And right now, neither side is feeling political pain. There's pain being felt by the federal workers who aren't getting paid. There's pain being felt by people who need federal assistance in some way but aren't getting it because of the shutdown. But political pain, federal workers are not a pressure point for this president.
And Kirsten, let me bring you in on that, because the president had another opportunity today to express compassion and sympathy for those workers, some of whom live paycheck to paycheck. Here is some of what he said.
I really believe that these people, many of the people that we're talking about, many of the people you're discussing, I really believe that they agree with what we're doing. And many of those people, maybe even most of those people, that really have not been and will not be getting their money in at this moment, those people, in many cases, are the biggest fan of what we're doing.
And there's absolutely no evidence to back that up. And in fact, it contradicts what the president said a day or two ago when he seemed to suggest that most of the people who are federal workers are Democrats.
Yeah, well, I actually lived through a couple of shutdowns in the Clinton administration, and pretty much everybody that I knew, every person, whether they were a political appointee or whether they were a career person, was living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, people who owned homes were terrified that the bank was going to go to pull the money and the money wasn't going to be there. That's the way most government workers are living. They aren't living large, I think, the way a lot of people think that they are. And so he also said today something about the landlords should go easy on them. Well, you know, first of all, that carries no weight, just for starters. Second of all, landlords also have bills and mortgages to pay, right? So the money comes in and it goes out. So it has impact on everybody. And so I think you're right. The pain is being felt predominantly by the people who can't pay their bills. And I guess, you know, I do sort of worry that the Democrats will end up giving in on it, because they're the ones who are going to be more moved by this, frankly, because I don't think that the president isn't going to be moved at all by the fact that these people are suffering.
Also, is he a landlord who would accept that?
No.
As a man who deals in real estate. But yeah, look, I think the issue is that, yes, federal workers and this part of the argument is not a pressure point on him. And it won't become one. Democrats, I think you're right, are more likely to be the ones who feel that pressure, but he took the pressure off of them quite conveniently by saying, I'll take the rap for this. So that's, I think, why it might last longer than it otherwise has in the past.
He shifted his tone on that, though, and now he's putting it at the feet of Nancy Pelosi, even before she was became Speaker yesterday. I think the other interesting thing to me is we're talking about Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. There's another person involved. That would be Mitch McConnell, who also has just as much responsibility as the majority leader of the Senate.
Now, what Mitch McConnell has said was that this is really a negotiation between the Democratic leaders, because it needs to pass the House, and obviously they need 10 Democrats or whatever it is, and now it's actually more than 10 Democrats,
Don't make me do
12
math,
or
man.
13 Democrats, in order to get through the Senate. Not that he's sidelined, but that the negotiation needs to go to those people. Well, what's the way out of it? You suggested a way, but not in terms of the specifics of what's in the bill. What do you think should be in the bill that both sides can claim victory?
Money for border security that President Trump can spend on surveillance, on a fence, which maybe you could define as a steel see-through wall. I mean, I think that's the way this ends, is with the Democrats giving some kind of money for border security, because while the wall is unpopular, border security is not.
That's right.
And there are a lot of people who were just elected in the House who come from districts that Donald Trump won by 2, 3, 4 points, who don't want to be seen as soft on border security, or they're going to be vulnerable next time around. So I think something that includes less than $5 billion, but some amount of money for border security, that Nancy Pelosi can say, this isn't a wall, and Trump can say, this is a wall. I think that's the only way out of this.
Isn't that offer already on the table, though? I mean, aren't they offering like $1.5 million or
A billion, it's the 1.3 billion.
Yeah.
But that's obviously not enough.
Right. So you're saying they would have to offer more money than that, because they basically have said, we support border security, we'll give you this money, but we're not going to give you the money for the wall, and that's where the $5 billion comes from.
And ultimately, the big solution, obviously, we know, because Jeff Flake, he used to say, you know, all these Democrats in 2013 voted for something like $40 billion in border security, not a border wall, but border security, but it came with this giant immigration reform comprehensive
It was a
package.
comprehensive immigration package that folks have forgotten all about, and it is necessary. Somehow, the entire immigration argument has been reduced to a physical wall that we have once tried with physical and electronic surveillance and fencing through SBI Net, which was the Secure Border Initiative, and it did not work. Like, I don't know why we're not having that conversation either. It's very important. I'm going to continue to repeat it because I hope somebody will hear it.
And remember, also, there's a question about what will constitute the wall. You're talking about it. Caitlin Collins from CNN asked the president about that today, whether it's going to be concrete, whether it's going to be steel slats or whatever he said. Take a listen.
You ran your campaign promising supporters that Mexico is going to pay for the wall
here we
and
go
that the
again.
wall was going to be made of concrete. You just said earlier that the wall could be made of steel.
I said I was going to build a wall. I never said, I'm going to build a concrete. I said I'm going to build a wall.
You said
Just so
concrete.
you don't, because I know you're not into the construction business, you don't understand something. We now have a great steel business that's rebuilt in the United States. Steel is stronger than concrete.
All right. But again,
First of all, I wish that Caitlin would have came back and said, actually, I come from a family of like anything. Anyway, I just can't even believe he told her what she does and does not know. I'm on a whole.
well, this is a president who has declared himself an expert on drones, on all sorts of things in the last week.
Kinds of
But
things that he's not
but
an
construction, actually, he might legitimately
No,
lay a
that's fair.
claim
But
to.
Caitlin, what if he doesn't know her background?
Anyway,
I'm just saying, like, when is
but the other issue doesn't matter. Does it matter if it's concrete or steel slats or a
No, I think in the end,
A paper fence?
whatever the money for border security has to include, I think, in order for them to come to a deal, has to include something that is physical, that he can claim as a wall. I think that you could point to parts of things they've passed in the past that could be that some Democrats have backed. Now, to your point, Angela, I think you're right. The comprehensive immigration reform should be the goal.
Right.
An issue is because things like that have passed in the past and then sort of been gutted and physical barriers never come to fruition, people feel betrayed on that point. And that is where trust falls apart for a lot of people on the right or even center right. And they need a down payment on that. And that's what part of this would be.
Everyone stick around. Just in mass.